flies when you're having fun. Good morning. Well, good afternoon. Hey, everybody. How are y'all today? You've got Just Me. Cooper Academy is going to be a logo because she's working on some title stuff and some pop by gifts. So I just want to run you through what the rest of the year looks like for Ninja and what's going to be going on. So we've got this week and next week of, and so we've got 2 more weeks left of Ninja by the Book. And I mean, I'm telling you, we have covered every word of Ninja Selling by Larry Kendall. So I'm super excited about that. I'm super excited that you guys have delved into this book. I'd like to think that we're the crazy audio version with a little bit, probably too much personality. I hope Larry Kendall appreciates our homage to him. So thank you, Larry, for the book and the opportunity to really delve into the concepts that lead to the system are super, super important. And I'm so excited about it. It's been a dream come true for you guys to spend your time, your afternoons, your lunches with me is huge. And a lot of work goes into this. And I love every single solitary minute of it. So anyway, what we're going into this week, right? So we're in Principle 4, and we are talking about the Ninja consultation. So we're taking that connect and that communicate, and we're putting it together in a straight up system that's easy for you to follow. If you're in the position to be able to take notes, you might want to. If not, obviously we record this and you can go back over it, but the notes may be interesting. If you have your book on hand, we're starting in chapter 37. So I think you're going to find a lot of amazing information about really how to talk to people and the order that you should go in, what specifically you should ask, and what that reciprocity looks like, and that back and forth in communication. This has been, I don't know, some of you may have took communication courses, particularly modern communication courses in college. Many of you probably have advanced communication degrees. Certainly we're taught this as part of your business training, things like that. But I think it's really interesting. I'm a grizzled old veteran in real estate sales. 2021 will be my 30th year. I have been through every sales. I have taught every sales teaching that there has been, from Buffini to Sweat Hogs to Tommy Hopkins to everything that could possibly be taught. I was the original, part of the original 16 members of the regional training for Keller Williams. So I've been doing this a long time. And it's interesting, Ninja Selling has been around for a long time, but his concepts are very today. They're very modern. They're very, he redoes them. He redoes, Larry Kendall's a very learning-based person. So he's constantly looking at the science and constantly looking at how clients and customers want to be treated today, because that's shifted, right? And so that's what we're going to talk about. So let's get into the meat of this. And in chapter 37, we start talking about the Ninja consultation. And most of us, right, we're taught that 3-step deal where you walk in, you know, you shake the hand, you build rapport, then you make your presentation and you get out all your charts and graphs and do your whole thing. And again, for those of us that have been in luxury real estate for a long time, we were taught to really present and bring out all the stops and include features and benefits, right? So our way to build rapport with the client during the presentation was to include features and benefits of our brokerage and what we brought to the table as agents. The problem with that is that it doesn't really help you build rapport. And then you would go from your kind of superficial rapport building questions straight into your presentation and then right into your close, right? So, if you're on a listing presentation, we would do our presentation, right? We build our rapport, walking through the home, looking for things that we could connect with, like a picture of a child with a soccer ball, and maybe your kid played soccer as well, that type of thing. Launch into the presentation of what you and the brokerage can do for the client, and then sign here. We're not doing that anymore, right? So Ninja, we're going to completely unlearn all of that. And I can tell you that if you have been in this business any time over 5 years, the unlearning process is going to be a little bit different. So if you've got a pen on hand, you might want to take a couple of notes, because we're going to get into the 4-step process. This is super important. I'm going to give you an overview of the 4-step process, and then we're going to spend this week and next week going in specifically to each step. So let me give you the overview. So the 4-step process doesn't start necessarily with only building rapport, which is a little superficial. It starts with trying to engage a connection, right? So we know from the beginning of the book, right, that people want to work with somebody who they feel like they know, like, and most importantly, trust. A lot of times, people will make some of these decisions in the first few minutes. So we want to start with a super strong opening. So in that connection part, we're looking for that type of reaction that you actually feel from the client. You're actually feeling it in here and in here, that they are connected with you. If they like and trust you, they're going to go ahead and go down the path with you. And if they don't, they may still go down the path with you, but the relationship could be a little strained. And that can be as a result of that first contact. And it may take you time to overcome it. So what we're trying to teach you here today is to really, really, really build on that connection in the right order, in the right way, with the right questions and the right stuff, so that you can have a meaningful, deeper relationship that will carry you through the length of the transaction, and hopefully you'll have clients for life, and that's what we're here for. So the question is, on the first step on connection, do they want to go down that path with you, or do they want to escape? So we definitely don't want them to want to escape, right? And then the second step of that 4-step process, there's connection. Then we're going to gain information. This is what sets you apart from every other salesperson, right? Most salespeople will go from the rapport building stage. They might skip connection straight into that presentation. We're not going to do that, right? We're not going to go straight into that presentation phase. We are going to avoid that. And the reason why we're not going to go straight into that presentation phase is that it's a bad approach. So basically, you're going to start launching into what, Cooper Sotheby's International Realty can do for that client. You're going to try to enter their prayers without knowing what their prayers are. You've got no idea what's important to them. Just after you've asked them a few superficial rapport building questions, you haven't gone into the connection. Now you're going to go into presentation. It doesn't even feel right to me, right? So we used to call that the old spaghetti method, where you toss a spaghetti and you see which strands stick on the wall. We don't want to do that. The other problem with that presentation phase is that you're just blabbing, right? I mean, you may be a great presenter, and boy, are we in business with some great presenters. I mean, we've got the best in the world in our brokerage. The problem is that you as the presenter has all that time of possession. The clients aren't talking. And the danger of that is the clients start drifting out. So as a ninja, instead of launching into a spiel, we're going to teach you to gather information with questions that make sense. So critically important, so that you can build on that foundation of trust. You can give your clients confidence. You can help discover what their real internal dialogues are saying, what their points of pain are, what their points of pleasure are. And then you can formulate a plan that has solutions that actually have to do with whatever their problem is. So again, our step 1 is connection. Our step 2 is we're going to ask informational questions so that the customer is talking and you're not talking. We're not going into that presentation phase. This is an earth-shattering way of dealing with real estate with buyers and sellers. And then step 3 is so awesome because we're going to be able to create potential solutions. What I love about Larry Kendall is that he just dives so deep into the science behind how customers decide what solutions, how they make those decisions, what their solutions are. And there's basically pretty much 2 keys, right? Key number 1, we want the customer or the client to have total clarity about what's happening, and they need clarity about what they need. Remember, we've gone through almost the entire book. I think the one thing that we can all agree on that we've discovered is that sometimes people don't know what they want and need. In other words, it can't come out without you helping them with this consultative dialogue and helping them kind of learn what they really want. Or if you're dealing with a couple, help them negotiate through that by asking these types of questions. So again, on that creating potential solutions, your step 3, you're really, really, really gonna want to figure out how to help the client be clear, right? When clarity is just basically the absence of confusion. And we want them to be competent, because when they're competent that they have all of the information that they need, when they're confident about about the process that you are carefully leading them into, right? As a servant leader, you're carefully leading them through this process. They're not afraid. They're not afraid. They have given themselves permission to go ahead and make that huge purchase, to transfer into a new city, to make that big move, either with or without certain family members. This is a big, big deal. And part of this is giving them solutions to what their lifestyle, their area, their geographic area, all of those issues that they're having. There's a lot involved in a real estate transaction. So there's a lot. So we've got to honor that by how we approach the client. And I personally don't believe that whole presentation mode. Look, if you're a great presenter, and I'm looking at some of the experts on here who have actually been doing it longer than I have. The Bradfield team is on here, Christy. You know, you guys are great presenters, but I'm hoping that you understand that there is an ethical and a different way to do business. And those of you who haven't necessarily been to the Ninja installations before, you'll see that this is a pathway that will lead you towards instantaneous success, and I love this. So our consultation is 4 steps. Step 1 is connection, which is more than just building rapport. Step 2 is getting that information, uncovering those points of pain or pleasure, and getting permission from them to go ahead to step 3, where you can create potential solutions and help solve their problem. And now we're going to go into step 4, where we're going to give them a proposal and the customer is going to make that decision. So you're going to propose solutions. And this is so fun because I'm going to give you an example of how Larry did that that's in the book that I think is one of the greatest things in the world. But knowing the science of how people process information, how they store information. I know this is a lot of weird, nerdy brain stuff that I happen to love, you may or may not. But the truth of the matter is that armed with this knowledge and armed with somebody who has studied this and has given you a script so that you can change maybe how you've been doing business and see amazing results of what will happen when people feel heard, they feel understood, they feel clear, they feel confident. So we're going to review it real quick one more time. It's our 4-step process. Today we're going to cover 2 of those steps, and then next week we'll do the last 2. So we're going to start with connection. We're going to start with getting that information, step 2. Step 3, we're going to create a solution for them. And then step 4, we're going to give them a proposal so that they can make that great decision. So I love Larry's story when he talks about this. So Larry basically he got an opportunity to go interview with a gentleman who was moving a chain of retail stores to his area, which is Fort Collins, Colorado. And Larry said that the guy, flew down and they were going to meet, I think, at a neutral location. I believe it was a conference room at a hotel. And so Larry gathers all the information that he's going to get. Basically, this is a huge commercial, transaction. It could be multiple stores, locations. So this is a big deal. So Larry doesn't approach it like everybody else, right? He doesn't go in with, tons of people in black suits and all of the presents, he goes in thinking very differently. And I think this is huge because Larry says he walks into the conference room and the CEO is already there. And the CEO's, ready, and he's poised in his suit, ready for the presentation that's about to happen, because that's what salespeople do, right? And Larry stops and he kind of sits back and he says, "Okay, Mr. CEO, can I ask you some questions?" And the CEO's like, "Well, okay, that'd be fine." And he said, "Could you tell me the story of how you built this company?" And the CEO immediately sits back, relaxes his hand position, and starts telling the story of how the company was formulated, what they did, what their priorities were, his personal story. He gets all of that information. And I love this so much because automatically Larry's putting the client at ease. He's giving him, the client, the CEO, time of possession to talk. And so from that story, Larry said, "Okay, so how many stores do you have now, Mr. CEO?" And he said, whatever it was, 150 across the nation, what have you. And he said, "Well, how many do you have in Colorado?" And the CEO didn't have any in Colorado quite yet. And so Larry asked a very interesting question. He said, "So what's the process of deciding how you all open stores?" And then CEO said, "Well, like most retailers, we look at demographics, we look at population, we look at household income," right? That kind of makes sense. And then Larry says, "Okay, is there anything else?" And he said, the CEO says, "Well, then we did a site visit." And then Larry said, "Well, what do you look for at the site visit?" So I think this is a point at which in the questioning, Larry's going deeper and deeper, right? He's taking the question embedded out of the last answer and going a little bit deeper than most people would go. What do you look for on the site visit? Kind of interesting question. And the CEO leans back and laughs and he says, "Well, I look for two things. I look for women." And Larry says, "What?" And he goes, "Well, I look for women, and can she wear our clothes? Do the women there, would they wear our clothes? And do they spend money on clothes? Because this is a fashionable, retail boutique." And then Larry's like, "Well, okay, well, what's your opinion of our women?" And the CEO apparently lit up and he said, "I love your women. They're very fashionable. I just love them." And so at that point, Larry's identified a point of pleasure, right? A point where the CEO is saying to himself, "Yes, yes, yes." And then Larry said, "Okay, well, what's the second thing you look for?" And the CEO said, "Cows." And he goes, "Women and cows?" Larry's like, "What?" And he goes, "Well, we look for cows," the CEO says, "because if there's a lot of cows, we feel like it's too rural, and the women may not prioritizing buying fashion in a more rural environment like they would in an urban environment." And Larry said a couple of things. He said, "Well, that's interesting." And he said, "Well," he goes, "which way did you come here?" And the CEO said, "Well, we went down the toll road." So the CEO goes from the airport to the toll road through a completely rural area. It was a brand new toll road. The CEO didn't know this. Larry explained to him, "Look, you cut through a rural area because that's a brand new toll road, and that's where people were willing to sell off acreage to the state in order to make room for that toll road." And he said, "If you come this way, you would see the urban environment and all of the retail and the shops." And so the CEO was like, "Oh my goodness." And he said, Larry said, "Well, what about the women?" He goes, "Is there any particular type of woman that you're looking for?" And the CEO said, he goes, "Honestly, we really survey well, and our buyers tend to be Asian and Hispanic." And Larry said, "Well, Greeley, Colorado is 35% Hispanic." So I think the moral of the story is is that Larry was able to find the points of pleasure and pain. After seeing the cows, that CEO was not going to open a store anywhere near that area in Colorado, and Larry wasn't going to get a deal. But because Larry asked a couple of kind of a little bit deeper questions, he got to how that business operates, how that CEO thinks, and he was able to propose solutions which made complete sense. And basically, Larry, with those questions, uncovered points of pleasure and pain. Any one of us on this call could have easily done that. And I think it's a testament to the system that gives you the ability to offer a solution instead of showing and telling why I'm the best broker in Colorado or Texas or wherever you may be. This gives you a way to offer a solution. So also in Ninja Selling, we talk about you controlling the process and the buyer really controlling the decision, right? It is their decision. It's their decision where they put their store. It's their decision where they live. It's their decision whether they go ahead and buy that 2-story on the lake or that rambling 1-story with a fantastic view. We just need to have a process to put them into, right? So in order to think out of the box, you have to build the box, right? So it's super important that we understand that we don't want to put ourselves in the position of trying to talk somebody into doing something that they don't want to do. A lot of the calls I get as a sales manager are like, well, these people, I really think they should do this, and they're not listening, they're not doing this. And that tells me immediately that that agent needs to go back, get that client into the process where they can make good decisions, or they may need to rebuild trust so that client can listen to your proposed solutions. I've got one of 2 problems or possibly both there. So I think it's huge that we understand that as realtors, we tend not to have a process because we've been taught a method of selling for so many years. We just tend to wing it, right? So we know things that work for us. We know that, I know as an agent, I always had a habit of how I did a listing. I had a habit of how I treated a buyer. I would always meet the buyer at the office first. I did certain things. I had habitual things that worked for me, but I never really thought about it necessarily in terms of the client. So I love the fact that Ninja Selling gives you that opportunity to build that process, and that way your client can actually be in that process, but they control the decision, and it takes the pressure off of you, right? You don't want that client to, you're trying to tell them what to do, you're giving them advice or whatever, and they're backing away from you. You don't want that pursuer, distancer dance to start at the moment when they're considering writing a contract or signing a listing agreement with you. So I think it's super important that we recognize that what we're going to be teaching you over the next couple of weeks is the process. There is a 10-step buyer process called the buyer consultation and a 16-step seller process called the 16-step selling consultation. I think they're both super important that we master, and we'll be focusing on that toward the end of the year and the first part of next year, so that you guys are brushed up on how both of those processes work. And it incorporates, right, this 4-step communication process that's so important. So I think that's super exciting that we're going to do that. I love the way that Larry kind of stops at this point and he goes, okay, overall, after all of the chapters we've been through, right? And I think we're up to 38. After all of the chapters we've been through, 37 chapters of Ninja Selling, Larry ends that chapter talking about how to be a ninja. And I think most of you already are ninjas. I mean, in most ways, maybe there's just a little tweaking and maybe a little sequencing that needs to be fixed, maybe a couple of more things to learn. But he talks about how to be a ninja. And he starts with ask, don't tell. And it's just what we've been talking about. Stop showing, stop selling and telling, stop all of this drama and ask questions. Give your client that time of possession. We talked about it before that the client should be talking 75% of the time. You're talking 25% of the time. And that part you're talking is asking questions based on their last answer, right? So ask and don't tell. Also, pull and don't push. Stop pushing your message. And think of this also, guys, in your marketing. What does your marketing look like? Are you pushing in your marketing, or is your marketing telling a story about you, or is it something that your clients would be interested in? So again, in the broad analysis of your whole business, don't push, start pulling, right? So instead of pushing that message, try to get that information from your client. If you're advertising, try to figure out what that information is. Go to your brand managers and say, who is my target audience? Look at who's really responding to what you're doing on social media. Look at who's really responding on what's going on your sellers reports. Look at that data and start really, really, really pulling out information so that you can make those messages pure and clear that are for your audience and that they'll get value. We're always thinking in terms of creating value. So we're going to ask and don't tell. We're going to pull and don't push. We're going to probe with questions and don't pitch. So there's this horrible man that always comes up on my Facebook videos. I'm not sure why. And he's this very compelling car salesman that yells at the camera. I don't know if any of you have seen him. I don't know what his name is, but he's like, hey, hey. So this hey guy is all over my screen on Facebook. I don't know why. I think it's because I've watched him before. And so this guy is definitely pitching, and he's constantly pitching, come on down to the dealership, come on and do this. And he's standing in front of a car, and normally what he wears matches the car he's standing in front of, which I think is very odd. But I think that you can find the cheese factor that many of us experience when we're being pitched. It makes you feel uncomfortable. It makes you feel disconnected from the person that is pitching to you. It makes you want to run. So what we want to do is ask questions so that we can uncover those points of pleasure and pain, uncover that client's real internal dialogue, really what makes them tick, and what influences them and what fears they have. And you really want to build that connection and that trust so that they can feel safe enough to either admit it out loud to themselves or to their partner, or admit it to you so that you can get them where they need and want to be and help them make that clear, confident decision, right? We want to consult and not present, right? Because we want to be that trusted real estate advisor. We want to be that consultant. We don't want to be the one that's smashing them down, trying to tell them what to do. We want to solve and not sell. So again, you'll find that through the process of a real estate transaction, which is a very lengthy process, and through the process of the relationship that you have with that family, right? We want to be able to offer solutions. And we also, I think the last thing that I love the most is that ninjas serve and they don't sell. They have the hearts of a servant. They are humble. They are available. They treat people a certain way with a level of respect. And I think this is huge. So how to be a ninja? It's super simple. You're going to ask, you're going to pull, you're going to probe, you're going to consult, you're going to solve, you're going to serve, versus telling and pushing and pitching and presenting and selling. And I think that's huge. And that's how Larry in chapter 37. So let's get into detail about that 4-step process. Okay, and so remember our 4-step process is step 1 is connection, and step 2 is getting information. So let's kind of go deep into that connection side. And Larry breaks everything down into like little bitty bites so you can go and do, right? You can take chapter 38 and you can go and do this today. And I think it's super fun. So make this a part of how you think. Study this. Talk to yourself in front of the mirror. Practice with your kids. Practice with your spouse. Practice with your significant other. Practice with your buddies. Go out if you can and grab a face mask, have a face mask, grab a glass of wine, and start practicing, because this is huge. I think what I love so much about the connections side is that modern sales research is telling us that the critical step is not the closing. This is what I've been taught for 29 years. 29 years I've been taught close, 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 close. Your close has to be the best. You have to be the master at the presentation, and you have to master the closing. Not true. Get that out of your head. We're not closing. It's so important that that first step, that first opening is where the magic is happening. So we've got to really focus on that. So instead of thinking about going on a listing presentation and worrying about, okay, I've got my presentation, I've got this, I've got to close, I've got to present, I've got to do all this. Why don't we practice what we're going to do in those first 2 to 4 minutes? Those first 2 to 4 minutes, that customer decides, do I want to be in business with them? Do I trust them? Do I like them? How do I feel? Obviously, how you present yourself, obviously how you're dressed, all those things are going to matter, okay? This doesn't mean that your marketing materials don't matter. This doesn't mean that what you're wearing doesn't matter. None of that. All of that is still very relevant in order for them to trust you and like you, right? But what we want to do is make sure that we're taking care of the head stuff. We're going to talk about, over the next 2 weeks, we're going to talk about body language. We're going to talk about approach. We're going to talk about all of those things. There is no second chance at a first impression. So what I think is so fun is that Larry tells you exactly what you do when you meet someone, right? That's a potential client. It's called the 3-step greeting. It's super easy. And it's just a little bit out of order in which you probably already do, right? So your 3-step greeting is enroll, acknowledge, and then say who you are. So here's the big deal about this. Woo, aha. The big deal about this is that you're saying who you are last. So if you don't remember anything else from this video except who you are last, right? Let the potential client introduce themselves to you. So here's how this is going to work. So in step 1, right, when you first meet somebody out of the gate, the first question you're going to ask is, how are you? Or how has it been going? How are you doing? Whatever your phraseology is. But it's a how are you question. Why are we asking that? Because we want to see what their answer is. So if their answer is, I'm awesome, or I'm great. So I typically answer, for me, if it's true, I'm awesome. So automatically, when somebody answers, I'm great or I'm awesome, I can tell that they're either a power person or a people person, which means that they're probably risk takers. So I'm getting a hint as to their behavioral style by how they answer. I'm also getting a hint as to their situation, right? So if they say can't complain or not bad, that person may be a risk avoider. That person may move a little bit more slowly. That person may be a person that you need to take a little bit more care with because they could be risk avoidant. I love the fact. So that's all we're going to do. How are you? Then we're going to acknowledge them. So we're going to thank them for their time. We're going to thank them for traveling to meet you. We're going to welcome them to the office. We're going to welcome them on the Zoom call or the FaceTime call, right? So we're going to thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for meeting me. Welcome to the Zoom call. I really appreciate you taking this time. And oh my gosh, I love that tie, right? So we're going to thank them. We're going to welcome them. Or we're going to compliment them. Be careful when you compliment people's appearance. So there's ways to do that without it being weird. So you might want to say something like, you're meeting somebody that's coming in from out of town. They've been on a plane all day, and you can say, gosh, you guys look awesome and energetic and refreshed after being in the airport. and ask them how their airport experience was. So you've got all kinds of ways to compliment that person. You can compliment the relationship that you built over the phone if you haven't met them face to face before. So there's all kinds of fun ways to compliment them. So that's it. Step one, right? So easy. How are you? And then we're going to get a clue to where they kind of are on the behavioral scale. Then we're going to acknowledge them. We're going to thank them for their time. We're going to welcome them if it's appropriate. And then we're going to give them a compliment of, gosh, it's been so great talking to you. It's been so, you communicate so beautifully and your emails are so informative and well written. I love your tie, whatever that's going to look like. And then you're going to say, I'm Carolyn Rhodes with Cooper Sotheby's International Realty. Like you're the least important thing there, right? You're the humble servant. So that's what's so tremendous about the Ninja form of connection. It's going to put you at the bottom and the customer first. And that's how it should be. Imagine the effect that is going to have on a customer or client that is sitting there going, okay, I mean, I can hear the dialogue in the car, right? They get in from the airport. It's a husband and wife. They're driving in to meet you, right? They're going to your office. They're probably dreading it on some level. She's probably on the phone with the kids telling them to feed the dog or whatever. I mean, all of this drama is going on. Their greatest fear is it's like going to a car dealership, right? What's your greatest fear? That there's a salesperson there. That's what their greatest fear is. So if you follow this 3-step greeting where you're just nice, how are you? Thank you so much for meeting with me and your time and driving all the way here and making all these arrangements. Welcome to Texas. Oh my gosh, you guys look great after being through our airport, which probably needs a little renovation. And they'll laugh and start talking. You've immediately put them at ease. Then you can say, oh, by the way, I'm Carolyn Rhodes with Cooper Sotheby's. You have just completely blown up their preconceived notion about meeting a salesperson. And so what's going to happen? They're going to relax. They're going to reciprocate. You'll see the body language shift. You put the customer first and you last. No salesperson does that, right? You're avoiding the temptation to pursue. You're avoiding the temptation to lunge at them with a handshake during COVID, which is weird anyway. And the customer is kind of like, oh, I don't even know you. So that you're avoiding that whole pursuer distancer dance. You get that out of the way. It is gone. It is gone in those first couple of minutes. This is huge. I know this seems weird to kind of delve so deep in every little piece of interaction you have with somebody, but these subtle changes will make a tremendous difference in your life. And so in that first couple of minutes, right, you're going to use your 3-step greeting, and then you're going to work your way into our Ford questions, our family, our occupation, recreations, dreams, right? And so you can do that. And that's what you're going to use to build that rapport. This is what's so huge. And then you can tell if you're connected. Do you feel it? Do you feel that connection, right? If you nod and smile, because I tend to move around a lot when I talk, which most of you have noticed by now. If you're nodding and smiling, are they moving with you? Are they leaning in? Can you see that they're relaxed and happy, right? Then you know you have that connection, which is what you want. And once you've achieved that connection and you've got that reciprocity going, right? Just with that easy peasy 3-step greeting and then asking them questions on their speed about their family, about their job, about their recreation, about their dreams, right? Then you have the permission to take control of the process, right? So here's how it's going to go. So basically, I'll be the agent, right? And so I'm going to be like, hi, John and Mary, how are y'all doing today? John says, we're great. See, that gives you an idea. Are they risk takers or not? They're great, probably risk takers. And then I say, welcome to Texas. I'm Carolyn Rhodes. So great to finally meet you guys face to face. We've had the greatest conversations. You've been so much fun to talk to. Thank you so much for your time. And then Mary says, gosh, it's great to finally meet you too. Then I'm going to ask, hey, John, Mary, how was y'all's trip? John's going to talk, well, the flight was great. We didn't have anybody around us. We could put all our stuff out. Mary got to talk to the kids. We had a great time. We watched a funny movie. Have you seen blah, 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 blah? And then you're going to ask forward questions. So you've got kids. So I know you've got Tyler, who's about to have his first year in high school. So you've got more than one? Oh yeah, we've got a little girl who's 6 years old, right? Mary's starting to nod back to you. You're talking about the kids. Have you all had any time to do anything fun lately? No, we've been planning for this move with John's transfer. So the move is entirely because John is transferring. Mary, are you going to be working? So you're going to ask all of these questions, these forward questions, and this connection is being built and built and built and built. Once that happens, you'll find that there's a natural, we've gone through the forward questions, there's kind of a natural pause in the conversation, and then you can lead them, right, with your servant leader's heart into that process. You know, and you can say, you know what, John, Mary, if it's all right with you, what I'd recommend is that first, let's sit down in the conference room and let's go over so I can review everything we've been talking about by phone and email. And I've got a few additional questions just to make sure that I can get clear. Does that work for you? Well, of course it's going to work for them. And the beauty of this, it's going to take us right into step 2. So remember, in our 4-step communication process, right, we're going to do the connection. We're going to do the connection with our fun greeting and our forward questions. Then we're going to go into our information. And you can see how telling the client, hey, if it's all right with you, can we go over what we've talked about? A summary of what they want in a home, a summary of what they want in the process of selling their home, whichever client we're working with, a buyer or a seller. This is huge. So we're going into step 2, information. This information step is what separates ninjas from regular salespeople. Because remember, we were all taught to go straight into presentation. We're not going to do that. Don't skip this step. Don't skip the information step, because we don't want to undo all of the hard work we've done to make that connection with the client. Because if we go straight into presentation mode, all of a sudden you've gone back to being that icky salesperson. All of a sudden you've gone back to that video car guy, and they're like, what happened? I mean, we just had a great discussion, and then this guy goes into a presentation, or this gal, yuck, this doesn't feel good to me, right? It's not going to feel good to the client if you go straight into presentation mode. There's going to be something very artificial about it. And then it's going to force you then to go from presentation to close mode, where you're hammering them, okay, we're going to go look at this neighborhood first, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, or sign the listing agreement right now. We don't want to do that. So we're going to go into this step 2, the information process, with 3 goals, right? So our 3 goals are going to be to get clarity. In clarity, we're going to use a specific set of questions that are designed to help that client become clear. What is clarity? The absence of confusion. So we're going to go in a certain order. We're going to ask them specific questions. 2, our second goal is that we're going to build confidence, right? And so our questions are going to help that client build trust and confidence and take away their fear of you, of the process, of looking for a house, of listing their home, all of those things. And then 3, we're going to make them comfortable enough to be able to commit. And in order to commit, they've got to make that decision. And when they're comfortable and they're clear and they're confident and free to make decisions, right, they're going to go for it. And that's any behavioral style, from your power person to your perfection person. They're going to be fantastic and be able to move forward. If they are confused, they're going to stop. They're going to stop you in your tracks, or they're going to tell you they need to go think about it. So part of helping a customer or client get comfortable when making these decisions is that you're controlling the process. So this is why it's so important that we look at how the questions are sequenced. So you're going to begin asking questions in this information phase, right, of our 4-step process. We're going to ask questions that require small decisions. And this seems pretty simple at face value, but it's not quite that simple. Most typical salespeople are, again, not going to resist the temptation to launch into the spiel, right? That spiel, and then the client moves away, and then it forces the client not only to move away from the salesperson and blow up all of that connection that we made in step one, it's also going to move the client away from making a decision. And this is kind of a big distinction, because if they're not making that decision, you're not going to get anywhere with them through that transaction. And so we want them to achieve their goals. And most of the time when they're coming to you, right, their goal is going to be to buy or sell a home. And so we don't want to put them in a place of confusion, in a place of fear, or in a place where they're uncomfortable, so that they've got to run back, get away from you and think about it, right? So let's talk a little bit about the question sequence. And I think it's super important that we go through that, because we can ask the right questions. We can ask the right questions at the right time, but if we do it in the wrong order, we've got a problem. And that's what this is all about, right? So we're going to look at specifically the type of questioning. Again, Larry gets into this super deep, so hang on with me. We just got a few more minutes, right? So there's 4 basic types of questions. We've got lots of 4s here. And here's the correct sequence, right? We know that we want to start with the rapport and the connection, right? We know we want to start with our 3-step intro and our 4 questions. That's easy. So we know we start with that. The next thing where we need to take our questioning, right, is to foundational questions. And these are fun, really interesting questions. And foundational questions are the key to building a foundation of trust. You have to start there. The reason is that most people will want to jump into either a different type of question called dialogue questions, and we don't want to do that, right? We certainly don't want to do the presentation spiel. So let me give you an example. There is a dialogue question that we tend to ask right off the bat. Not sure why. What price point are you interested in? Put yourself in John and Mary's shoes. They just flew in, they're sitting down, and then you build your rapport, you do all the right things, and then you say, what price point are you interested in? So what's the internal dialogue of John and Mary? Well, I've been looking online. I really don't know what neighborhood. I thought this realtor was going to tell me that. I don't know what the answer is to what price point. If I say too high, they're going to probably try to sell me something higher, and I'm going to miss something in a neighborhood that would be spectacular that may not be quite as expensive. What's the right? I don't know what the right answer is. So you're going to automatically, with that dialogue question, going to kind of force them into a place of fear or of questioning themselves, being uncomfortable. They're nervous about giving you a wrong answer, or maybe even looking foolish. So we don't want to do that. So what I would do is start with questions, these foundational questions that allow them to make small decisions, right? So I know that we've talked about on the phone that you've been looking for 3 bedrooms. Would you look at a 2-bedroom with a study, or do you really need all 3 separate bedrooms? And what is that? And do you want them all grouped together with the small children, or would you take a split plan, right? So they can make these small decisions. And then the next question you're going to ask is going to access their prior knowledge. Tell me a little bit about the house that you live in now. What do you love about it? Well, no realtor is ever going to ask them that question. They're going to be completely off guard in a good way. And they're going to say, oh, we love this house. And, it took us over 6 months to find it. We found it ourselves. Our realtor never listened to us, right? You're going to get into all of that. You're going to get into their prior learning, their prior experiences. And this is going to allow them to open up and tell you the honest truth and be vulnerable. And I think this is so huge. Then that leads to, well, what was your process like buying a home? How did you decide? And they're going to be like, well, we went home. We had 5 houses that we liked. We narrowed it down to 2. We did a Benjamin Franklin T-square. He liked this one. I like this one. He went with me. And then you're going to find out, wow, so she was a decision maker of this house. he's moving her. Maybe she's really going to be the decision maker. So you're getting all of these clues with these foundational questions, and you're not putting them in a place of fear by asking the diagnostic questions too early, when they're afraid that they're going to give you a wrong answer, or that it's too deep, or they don't know the answer yet, right? So I think this is important, because if you start with the foundational questions, letting them make small decisions, and then, how did you pick the house that you live in now? Tell me about it. How was that process? Those foundational questions will give you access to what their experience was, and it will give you access to how they think and behave and make decisions, right? Then we're going to launch into our diagnostic questions. The goal of the diagnostic questions is to achieve clarity, right? And what's important about this, and we're getting really in the weeds here, so keep with me. We want to avoid any confusion in 6 areas, right? We want to make sure they don't have any confusion about the who, about the what, about the when, about the where, about the how, and about the why. Those are really big questions. So let me give you an example. Larry uses in the book. It's kind of a sad story, but this young couple was going to be living together for the first time, and he was being resistant, and the agent finally went back, recognizing that she hadn't asked enough diagnostic questions to figure out, whether it was the who, what, when, where, how, or why. And so she finally talked to the male, the young man, part of the couple, and he said that he wasn't really sure that she was the one that he wanted to live with. So he was resistant in the home purchasing, right? Because he was unsure about the who, about her. Now, it's kind of a dramatic example, but this is why we need to get into those 6 questions. If there's any confusion in any of those areas, your buyer will back off. And this is really an easy way for you to go, have I covered all my bases with everybody who's a decision maker? My who, what, when, where, how, and why. And a lot of times I think you'll see the places where they may get stuck specifically is obviously going to be your what, right? Your when, your timing, and their why. And so they may need to achieve some clarity there, and you can help them by asking these questions so that they're comfortable and confident that they're making the right decision based on, as a buyer, either the homes that they're seeing, or as a seller, what the next steps will be for them to go ahead and list. And then number 4, right? So we've gone from our rapport connection questions, these are our 4 types of questions, to our foundational questions, to our diagnostic questions, in that order, to our solution or closing questions. And so usually you're not going to be asking closing questions, because when they come to that point, they feel like you're their trusted real estate advisor. They're 100% confident in you. They are clear and confident. They will close you. And this is what is so tremendously important about this sequence. So chapter 38 and 39 are hugely important, because they take us through the 4-step process, the first 2 steps in detail. And again, I think if we can master the way to ask these questions, what this consultation looks like. So in review, I'm just going to give you a quick review. We know in the consultation, we want to begin with that connection, right? And we talked about how important that connection is, how to enroll them, acknowledge them, then say who you are last. We're going to melt the shield. We're going to be a servant leader, right? So that's pretty easy on the connection side. Remember to introduce yourself last. That's a big feature of the connection side. And make sure that you come in understanding that that first few minutes is critically important, much more important than the close, right? Because we're going to give them the ability to close themselves, because we're going to be so good at this. When we launch into the information phase, what we want to do is introduce that client to our process. And we're going to ask their permission. Hey, would it be okay if we sat down here and went over everything that we talked about, right? And then I can get clear and ask you a couple of questions about what you want. Then we're going to get that information. We're going to talk about what's important to them. We're going to allow them to make small decisions. We're going to go into our foundational questions, then into our diagnostic questions. And that way we allow them to have the time of possession. So you'll find that that 75-25% rule holds pretty clear, because what you're doing is you're intently listening so that you're asking questions that were embedded in their last answer. And remember, those foundational questions are going to be things about their past experience in purchasing or selling a home. And then we're going to get into the diagnostic questions, because you built all that reciprocity, you built that connection, then you've got permission to go into more specifics of those diagnostic questions, where we're going to look at the who, the what, the when, the where, the how, and the why. And we're going to make sure that we've got clarity in all 6 of those areas. And then they begin the process of making that decision, and you're just proposing potential solutions. So I think it's fun that you can use this technique, whether you're, maybe I had a couple of agents call me over the weekend in multiple offer situations. This is a great dialogue to have with your seller, who is evaluating multiple offers, teaching them how to make a great decision by giving them the information, making that process clear. So you can utilize this not just in that first time that you meet a client, but throughout the process of the transaction. So if you've got some listings right now, you can start over in that relationship. And this is what's so huge about Ninja. It's never too late to start, and it's never too late to go ahead and introduce your process at any point in the relationship that you have with a customer or client now. And so I would suggest, if you would, take a look at chapters 37, 38, and 39. Go through what those questions look like. Have a dialogue with your significant other, or in my case, one of my gigantic cats, or anybody else that's willing to go ahead and role play this with you. Give me a buzz. I'm happy to role play it with you, and I'll be a terrible, horrible client if you would like me to. But I think it is a fun, it's an informative, and it's a deeper relationship than you've ever had with your clients. And I am telling you, by going in this order, by utilizing these questions, you will find yourself earning more income per hour. You will find yourself creating raving fans out of your clients. You will find yourself absolutely getting referrals during the transaction. So next week, we're going to cover the next 2 pieces of our Ninja consultation, and we're going to cover those in detail. And in our final week, we're going to do some wrap up. So I'm looking forward to seeing you guys next Tuesday. We close with about 3 minutes to spare. So we'll see you Tuesday. Tomorrow at Skills, Katie and I will be talking about an idea for you to launch your database. If you're a newer agent to the business, or if you are needing a refresh in that database, or you've got a little database, you're going to find out some great ideas. I can't believe the stuff that Katie came up with. She was up all night working. So we've got some great stuff to talk to you about tomorrow at our Ninja Skills group. So it's been a great day. Thanks so much for your time. You guys are awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Give me a call if you need anything. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you next week for Ninja Skills. It'll be our second to last week. Mwah. Have a great day. Bye.